8th grade, Algebra 1, example number 11. We are continuing with using the quadratic formula, and the problems are getting a little bit more difficult. So if you notice in number 11, once again, it is not in standard form. So I'm going to put this equation into standard form. So first things first, I'm going to rewrite it. So negative 5p squared minus 5p plus 30 is going to equal to 10 minus 2p. I'm going to move this side, these two terms, I'm going to do the inverse property and move them to the left side. So I'm going to subtract a 10 and I'm going to add a 2p. What I do to one side, I do to the other. So I'm going to subtract a 10, add a 2p, draw my line, and of course on your right side, these two will cancel out. So on this side, I'm going to get negative 5p squared. I'm going to combine my like terms of negative 5p and a positive 2p. So that's going to give me a negative 3p. Combine my like terms of 30 and a negative 10. And that's going to give me a positive 20. And of course, because the other side canceled, it's going to give me an answer of 0. But I have to get rid of that negative. So I'm going to I'm going to multiply everything by negative 1. When I multiply everything by negative 1, it's going to change everything in parentheses to the inverse. So a negative times a negative is a positive 5p squared. A negative times a negative is going to be a positive 3p. And a negative times a positive is going to give me negative 20. And a negative times 0, of course, is going to give me 0. So now I have my variables. My a, it is going to be a positive 5. My b is going to be a positive 3. And my c is a negative 20. So your variables are identified now. So now I'm in step 3, which is I'm going to substitute those variables into the quadratic formula. So you should be very familiar now with the quadratic formula, which is x equals to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, and it's all being divided by 2 times a. And I'm going to substitute. So it is going to be negative 3. And I don't have to put that 3 in parentheses because it's not a negative. So it's not a double negative. So therefore, negative 3 plus or minus 3 squared minus 4 times my a value of 5 times my c value of negative 20. And then it's all being divided by 2 times 5. Again, once again, do not use alpha y equals on that beautiful TI-84 calculator you have. You can use it just to solve the discriminant part. So negative 3 plus or minus, and then inside the radical part, 3 squared is 9, and then a negative 4 times 5 is a negative 20. A negative 20 times a negative 20 is positive 400. So 9 plus 400 is going to give me 409. And then it's going to be divided by 10. So this is actually an easier problem. The only difficult problem about this was that it made you work a little bit harder for putting it in standard form. So again, this is not a perfect square root. I'm writing this because this is your notes, okay? So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to simplify this radical, and you simplify it the way your teacher taught you. And you can use the calculator, so I'm going to use my calculator. Here we go. And I'm going to enter that square root of 409. And you can tell that it's not a perfect square root. So then I start 409 divided by 2. I'm going to get a decimal. 409 divided by 3. I'm going to get a decimal. So even with me multiplying with a prime number, I'm still getting a decimal. So in reality, you can no longer reduce 409. It has to stay as the square root of 409. I can't break it down anymore. I can't simplify the radical. And so therefore, this is going to give me two problems. The plus and minus is going to give me two problems. So you actually had this one a little bit easier because you can't simplify that radical. And so one of the problems is going to be x equals to 3 plus the square root of 409 divided by 10. And the other one is going to be x equals to 3 minus the square root of 409 divided by 10. And again, it is two terms in the numerator, but you can't reduce 3 and 10. And there is a 1 here, but you don't see it. And you can't reduce the 1 and the 10 because it's already reduced. So my final answer is going to stay like that. There's nothing for me to reduce. So actually, this was actually an easier problem than number 6. My answer choice for this one, it is going to be D. Again, these are examples. You have 15 problems. They're the same thing, substituting, using your steps. But if you have any questions, go back to these videos or even Google further on. Also, if you have any questions, make sure you let us know. Thank you.